Unearthliness she sits and sings, and she sings by Lily. Little I know my bairn's father, far less the land that he lives in. Then one arose at her bed foot, and the grumbling guest, I'm sure was he, saying, Here I am, the babe's father. Although I be not comely, I am a man upon the land. I am a silky in the sea, and when I'm far and far from here, my home it is in Zulgari. Hoy, hoy, here, ho, was ne well with maiden fair. It was ne well indeed, quoth he, that the great silky of Sulscary should ham and goat a barn from me. Now he's taken out his purse of gold, and he's laid it down upon her knee, saying, Give to me my little wee son, and you pick up your nurse's beam. It shall come to pass on a bright summer's morn, when the sun shines bright on every stone, I will come and take my wee son. And I'll teach him how to swim the foam. And you shall marry a proud gunner, and the very fine gunner I'm sure he'll be, but the very first shot that e'er he fires will kill both my young son and me. Oh, 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 yoy. Howdy, folks. Hawk of the morning to Welcome aboard to the Above the Bell Curve. Come for the Italian abuse, stay for the deep cut spiritualism, and unfurling of esoteric secrets. Remember when white people were cast and portrayed as anything but evil, gay, retarded, or all three, all of the above in Hollywood? Back in the 80s and 90s. Not that it should matter very much. You should never trust Hollywood. Never trust a clown! Never trust a clown! I feel bad for all the there's good people everywhere. I feel really bad for all the good clowns when the John Wayne Gacy stuff was coming out. Oh my gosh. But the fact of the matter is John Wayne Gacy had 12 keys made for his house, and the 33 reported murders are very Masonic core, so one can only imagine what the heck was going on in Chicago. George W. really gave Zionism everything it wanted and more, and they still pushed the envelope as far as they could. Just goes to show you. Just goes to show you. You know, if 9/11 happened in the Flintstones universe, do you think that the birds would hit the rock towers in the Rocktagon? Bonnie, they hit the Rocktagon! You know, we could go higher than Musk. We need to get Kanye in the president's ear again. You think that the American government is absurd now. Kanye West, Jacob Wall, Ethan Ralph. Bring him in here. Let's get Ethan Ralph in there. Let's go. Tell you one thing, Mr. President. I say all deadbeat dads should be exempt from taxes to tax-free if you really want to know the truth about it. Okay. Jokes aside. Not a lot of people know this. Not a lot of people remember this. But Rick Scott injected poison deep into Florida aquifers quite some time ago. And here's the full story. Rick Scott was heavily invested in Lake Okeechobee nitrogen plants. So here's how this goes. The Lake Okeechobee sugar corporations would place both sides of the political aisle, causes massive fungal blooms because of their farming practices, to sum up. The fungal blooms, the algal blooms, they form red tide, they form toxic blue-green algae, and they choke out all the oxygen and life in the water. And they cause fish kills. These fish are then collected through NGO nonprofits that Rick Scott then gets all the fish to his personal companies that make nitrogen, processing the dead fish into nitrogen, which there are many ways of making nitrogen. That's one of them. And then he induces more nitrogen pollution into Lake Okeechobee, and the cycle repeats itself. And I guarantee you, now here's an interesting thing about all of that. Tangentially related is MK Ultra sub-project number 12, involving the Florida fish poison tree. And a lot of these algae blooms, they call them blue-green algae, but something ain't right about them, involve water so toxic that if pets jump in them, they'll start to seize out, go in a coma, and die afterwards when they get out. It's that bad. And I'm not joking about that. That's not something made up. That's a legitimate anecdote. It's a legitimate anecdote from stuff that's happened in these lagoon outbreaks. It's decimated. Absolutely decimated, which is to destroy 1/10 of, isn't a strong enough word for what it's done. It is obliterated life around the rivers and the lagoons. And I gotta say, there has to be some chemicals other than just nitrogen being dumped in Lake Okeechobee to cause this. And Rick Scott, his grand solution was to inject it deep in some of our deepest aquifers. So Zephyr Hills, enjoy fish poison water, essentially. That's the sum up of that. And another one, MK Ultra Sub-Project 115, was literally putting dangerous people from asylums into neighborhood. Remember how Trump was saying that they're taking people from asylums and putting them into our country? He was right. He just wasn't pointing the fingers in the right direction, essentially. Now, if only we could have somebody responsible for government efficiency who wasn't a complete and utter wastrel tard, who is so hyper-focused on himself and literally going into a very visible insanity spiral in front of everybody. And this isn't just like, oh gosh, I dislike this guy so much, I'm so jealous. He is quite literally publicly on X going into an insanity spiral. And according to anonymous sources, so don't take this at complete face value as the truth, but according to anonymous sources, he was crying and melting down in the office before Trump got out there and did the whole Tesla showboat thing. I mean, I told you that the way that he was behaving was going to negatively impact his stock. Like, sorry, that's just... I'm not an expert in finances and stocks and stuff, but it's a couple of things are pretty obvious when you're a certain age and you've seen a few things. So that's that. Here's a memory. When I was in high school as a freshman in video game club, we had a meeting at my close friend's house, who I deeply love, and we were playing Brawl, which I deeply love. I really, really like Brawl. It's my favorite one, and I play Kirby. And I got into a fight with an older guy who named Ike. He ended up standing up and picking me up by my hair and dangling there until Jamil, my close friend, who was the leader of the club and knew Muay Thai, said, "Put him down!" in the most authoritative voice that I've ever heard him use. Like, he's not a violent person, but like I've seen him on a punching bag, and it is impressive. And the guy did, and he left in a huff. And this guy was called Big Red. He was huge, and I was tiny and as a freshman. Like, this guy was like 6'5", and large. Oh, he literally picking me up with one hand and dangling me. And Jamil, who's like very thin, but also like 6'3", probably would have kicked his ass. If I'm not exaggerating, like probably would have. Do you piss? I got news for you, buddy. You're an aqueduct. You're moving water. And what if his name was Curly? And what if his name was Mo? And what if they knew a guy and his name was Larry? And what if they were the Stooges and it was just them three? And what if they had adventures and I ha-ha-hoo-hee-heed? Thanks, Baron Daniel. Love you, man. Pickup line idea. If you ever see a girl wearing glitter, you gotta tell her that she's responsible for the microplastics in your balls and to help get them out! Help me! Now let me tell you something about women. No, really, though. You should never really hate women or be violent towards women. Please clap. But seriously. Regardless of how technology has equalized the sexes, women in general wish better for humanity than men. They're less likely to hurt you or rob you than men. And even when they do rob men, who are their managers? Who own the platforms they use to rob Johns? That's right, men. You gotta go into, like, Soviet history to find any real woman soldiers. Lesbians? The statistics are in, they're more likely to hurt each other than they are to hurt you. Okay? So, like, anybody who's just like, women are the... Like, really, that is crock. That's a crock. The people who hate women need to go to boot camp. I'm not joking. I'm not joking about that. Oh, and pimps are 1,000% a conspiracy. Same reason why I've suspected this for a long time. It's the same reason why cops never went after crack, and the ones that did ended up on on the legitimate, real, non-meme Clinton kill list, like that state trooper. If you think otherwise because of fentanyl, first off, it's an open secret that the cops take bribes from the cartels. Everybody really knows this if they're informed about what's going on our southern border. Secondly, and a lot of those same like areas, like they're just like the issue's bigger than me. The issue's bigger than me. The issue's bigger than me. Because the violence is more important than the money. Because the violence causes the intimidation and allows the money to flow. Excuse me. Anyways, secondly, when any issue is allowed to grow, it grows. It becomes harder to control. It spirals out of control. it festers and the infection spreads. So even if they do want to stop the fentanyl, it'll be harder because of the crack epidemic through racism was funneled into our inner cities and then exploded into the lower class and even the middle class, taking a lot of their kids, white people too. So racists, here's your sign, okay? That it like blowback is a real thing. Although I can't help but respect people who at least take being a paragon of protecting your own people as the whole purpose behind their racism. Some people just use it as a funny hee hee ha ha, and they're not really all that serious about it. And that's okay. And some people are just hateful and just and their hearts have wounds in them, and they're just lashing out all over the place. That's a lot of people. And then there's got a lot of, people overseas that are pretending to be white supremacists so that they can get in on the action, if you will, of the West and the first world, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like the first world is all white, but it's almost like it's mostly white. That's a weird thing. It'd be nice if everybody had the right to choose what they consider to be poverty, instead of having there's no such thing as a poor land, but there's no such thing as a poor place. And originally, there was really no such thing as a poor people unless you were... and this is the thing, it's created. It's created by going upstream and damming up the river where people required it, like what happened to the Native Americans, like what happened to the Saharans. A lot of those, for $1 a day, you can help. People that you see on the TV, they were already dead by the time those commercials were airing. Anyways, I love Candace Owens and all, but the Andrew Tate apologetics is -1 million aura. It really is. It really is. She needs to get over that. In many ways, Yemen is to House Saud of Najd. Because Yemen was like trading capital of the Arab world, coffee capital. Basically, the Yemen is like the heart of Arabia, and in many, many different ways, kind of the heart of Islam, believe it or not. Genuinely, like the heart. Just like Wales is the heart of, the Anglosphere. Yemen is in many ways the heart of the Arab sphere. But the Sauds hate them and want to destroy them and obliterate them completely and utterly, wipe them off the map. It's just the thing I've known for a long time, before I even knew what a Houthi was. And Lebanon is the same with the Israelis. Like, the Lebanese are a lot of times descendants of the Phoenicians. And they were like a major all-star player in the Mediterranean world, and amazing traders, just like the Yemenis. But the Israelis want to wipe out their cousins, their distant cousins. They do. They genuinely do. And it's like, here's the thing, is like a lot of people say, oh, everybody hates the Gazans. Everybody just hates the Palestinians. That is partially true, but it's way more overplayed than you think. Everybody loves Lebanon. Everybody loves Lebanon. Like, legitimately, Lebanon is one of the most beloved places in the entire Muslim world for the rest of the world. So that's going to be a much, much harder fight. There's a Christian genocide in Syria right now. Assad was really holding things together. And the Alawites are being purged for the most part too, although I hear that slowed down just recently. Assad was holding things together, and I've been an Assad defender for years. Yeah, I have. I saw a lot of neoliberal brains dunking on him when he fled. A couple of whom I actually respect, like Brace Belden of TrueAnon, who legitimately went to the Middle East and fought ISIS alongside the Kurds. And I'm sure 1,700-year-old sects of Christians and Christianity being genocided wasn't his intent. I'm sure of that. But you gotta be careful when you're just like, oh, Assad was such a bad guy. Don't you know that he did bad things to certain people? Yeah, it's rough. It's very rough being in the aft end of the decadent, degraded Ottoman Empire. Wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Did you know Zionists want Chicago to be the capital of America? Not joking about that. That's why all the high-speed rail, aka the gang distribution spider's web, leads to Chicago in its planning, as its center. That's exactly how capitals work. You know, Chicago is exactly how the worst people on the planet envision our entire country. They want that particular cancer to metastasize, where everybody's shooting each other all the time. Literally, like Chicago is a constant war zone. I propose a theory that if you pander to Zionists for donations, you are also a welfare leech, because you are receiving from these people who don't have to work because they receive so much welfare, which will corrupt and poison their willpower and their motivation, that you are also a welfare leech. Like, if you can distribute that money to things that cause the planet to get better, it kind of equalizes, right? But at the same time, you still are. Anyways, back to women. Women make good anti-poachers. Ever heard of the Black Mamas? More like the Black Mamas, you feel? The anti-poaching, all-female anti-poaching organization in Africa that literally shoots dead poachers. And I feel like that's a good pro-gun argument right there. More women with guns! Kind of blows my mind to learn that since about 1970, couples have just constantly cheated on each other to the point where an entire swinger subculture has formed that spans 3 entire generations. Oh. Ooh. Like, Smashley marries a douchebag because she knows that it will give her the internal excuse to allow herself to cheat. That's a bad thing right there. And then he finds that out, and he's like, well, I'll get my excuses too. And, hear me out. I'm gonna... Shuffling all over the place. Like, really, there's an intensely awful swinger culture in Generation X that has attempted to infect the millennials, and it might eventually infect the millennials. If we get the, solid... There's already been a massive limiting of porn, and if we get a solid... banning of porn, people's brains will slowly start to return to normal. Because swinging wasn't really big until, porn got big, nudie mags were in gas stations and stuff like that. It's crazy that Indians sold nudie mags, they sold spice, they sell pills that are aftermarket pills that are for, explode your heart but give you an erection, It's crazy that Indians own these gas stations, and these gas stations that sell petroleum, and they're Indians, and they're making a bunch of money off of petroleum. It's crazy how all that works, ain't it? It's crazy how all that works. I never see anybody on the right calling out how many Indians own gas stations. Oh, and myself, I've seen Indians in gas stations taking SNAP, exchanging 50 cents on the dollar in solid cash for SNAP, food stamps assistance. That doesn't mean that most people who collect food stamps are doing that, but that has happened. I've seen it. I can confirm that for a fact. Anyways, we really need to go back to calling what AI is pretended to be what it really is. Machines can't actually learn, since the code to learn is itself a set parameter of codes. It can map out preconceived concepts, but is completely out to pasture when it comes to growth. It can bloat, but as we're learning with AI cannibalism and inbreeding, regardless of what you want to call it, that's actually worse than the consistent pruning of information that happens inside of your brain naturally. To further elucidate a point from yesterday, Italians allowed themselves to be weaponized to destroy New York, it's true. But I'm not trying to single them out. Same goes for the Spanish Americans in Miami, for Asian Americans in Southern California, and for the Irish people in Boston. Boston opened the first pediatric gender clinic 20 some odd years ago. Keep that in mind. Not just you Italians. We all fall short of the grace of God, and we all need to get better. Every single one of us is a fool, and as soon as we accept that we're a fool, then we'll start to get a little bit smarter. Feel me? Alright, y'all. Good episode for today. Cheers.